CCF, you may be seated. Laura. My name is Rick Sorensen. I have the privilege today of introducing to the body my daughter, Laura Roquet. You can tell that we're related because she gets all her good looks from me. Sorry, Jen. As my daughter, many of you realize that she's been playing violin since she was fairly young. She was under the leadership of Suzanne and James, and look where she is today. During the course of all those years, I've had many people approach me and say, "Oh my goodness, Rick, you must just have so much pride in seeing her up on stage and being able to worship alongside of her." And I gently correct, it's not pride, it's joy. I have joy when I see one of my children who has given herself to honor God with the gifts that God has given her. And so with joy, I present Laura Sorensen as she tells you a little bit more about it. Laura, okay. Sorry, she still is my daughter. Sorry, man. Laura, okay.
Is this on? Yes, it is. Well, thank you, Dad. That was very sweet. And you know, of all the introductions I've had, that's been the most recent one. Thank you. As Dad mentioned, most of you know me from being up here playing violin under James and Suzanne. They were both great mentors for me in worship and in my kind of musical career, as you might call it. But many of you don't know, I started music when I was 5 years old. We had a Korean exchange student. She lived with us for a year, and she played violin, and I was in awe of that. I was like, oh, I really want to do that. So, of course, that's how it started, and I got started that way, and played violin for quite a long. I mean, I still do, not as often, but I still do. So going into that, music has brought me a lot of different places in life and provided a lot of opportunities. I've been able to go to Europe with it. I've played with W. Smith, which is awesome. All of these kind of things. But one thing that I always try to consider, and my mom actually said this, especially when we went to Europe, not knowing the languages, anything like that, is that music is an international language. Everybody can feel it, everybody can know it. Even if you don't know the words, you don't know the language, you can still feel it. And so that's one thing I try to consider as I lead worship, and, those sorts of things. But my life has not always been about music. Going into my life a little bit, I moved schools a lot when I was younger. I started as homeschooler, private school, then I went to Linwood Elementary, then I went to Maplewood, and then I went to Leno High School, and then I went to community college, and it's kind of been a rough ride in those terms, as I've never had a ton of friends moving around that often. I've had one really good friend I've had in my life, but I grew up with her. Family friend. Anyway, but all of this kind of led to a little bit of loneliness, and the only area I felt truly valued in my school life was in music. That's the only time people paid attention to me. That's the only time people really cared about, my opinions or my thoughts or what I did. Other than that, I was kind of tossed aside a bit. And as I said, that led to a lot of loneliness. And when I was in high school, my siblings had moved out of the house. They all went to college, and it was just me and my parents. There was a bit of trial within the family life, and I just felt even more lonely. And for a while, I knew, as growing up in a Christian and loving family, I knew that God loved me, and I knew that my family loved me, but I just didn't feel it. I knew that I should know that God loved me, but I didn't quite believe it. I didn't feel it, and I was just extremely lonely. I had some issues with that loneliness, feeling unloved. I had some imagery issues with myself, being tossed aside all those years by by classmates and stuff. I didn't feel good about myself. And then there was this guy who showed up and he preyed on that. He knew what my weaknesses were, and he kind of used that in order to get to me, if that makes sense. So I became in a relationship with this guy who was no good for me. And that really tore my family apart because I was ashamed of myself, so I kept it hidden, in which that lying kind of, I was obviously found out after a while, and that lying really tore my family apart. It hurt the trust that we had in our family. Eventually that relationship ended, but I was always kind of hurt from that. He made me feel loved. He made me feel wanted. He made me feel beautiful where I hadn't had that before. But I realized now that he was just preying on my weaknesses. Eventually, after that relationship ended, I went to Nicaragua for the second time, actually. And while we were there, I realized that I had just been in a really dark spot. Through all of that, through the problems in the home, I was just in a very dark and negative area. I was also a moody teen, so that helped, didn't help, but it really elaborated on that. So with that, I went to Nicaragua for the second time, and while I was there, I realized there's no point in me being so negative all the time. Why am I negative? It's just dragging me down. It drags others down. It's not a good lifestyle to lead. And God really spoke to me while I was there and said, joy is what you need. And that's why we sang this last song, the joy of the Lord come down, and the joy of the Lord is my strength. And so I kept that in mind while I was there. That was one of the things that God really pressed on me. And while I was there, God actually really blessed me, because that's where I met Ben, who is my husband now. That's where I really got to know him much better. And that was really good. So really going through that loneliness and that heartache, God was still present in that time. And he really showed me what it was, what love actually was. Through Ben, I got to see love, and also just God's love was eminent in my life. I could really feel that. So now as we go forward, continuing with music and stuff, there was something that Pastor Brian said the other day that I really appreciated. And all my life I grew up with people telling me that my music was a gift. And I never really knew how to take that. I would always just say thank you and kind of move on. At one point I was called a snot, which is not like a bad snot. It was called supernaturally overly talented, what somebody said. And I had been asked when I was younger, I was asked, do you want to take music to a professional level? And at first I was like, well, no way, I don't want to practice all the time, because I had to practice all the time and it sucked. There was even a moment in my life where it came down to, okay, do you want to continue this or not? And I couldn't give it up. It was such a part of me at that time. I think it was 12, so it had been 7 years of playing, and I just couldn't give that up. It was such a part of me. And I also knew that was God's gift for me, and giving that up would be like throwing out his gift. So now, as I said, what Pastor Brian said the other day was that our gifts from God are not a gift to ourselves, but they are a gift back to God, and they are a gift to others. And so being able to share my music with you guys, to lead you guys in worship, and to ultimately point that back at God is something I truly cherish, and want you guys to be aware of as well. And I guess an overarching theme or takeaway from my life so far is that even in darkness, God is still there. And with my gift that I have, I want to point that back to him. So thank you for listening to my story, and we'll